The talk that I'm giving today for 10 minutes is making model cards. I am Chris Albon. For those who don't know, I'm the Director of Machine Learning at the Wikimedia Foundation. Just a little background for people who don't know, the Wikimedia Foundation is the nonprofit that runs the back-end part of Wikipedia. So I don't spend my days writing Wikipedia articles. We don't control the content on Wikipedia. We are the ones who are behind the scenes, making sure all the servers work, making sure everything is up, and building features for people. Most of the time that you use, but you don't really see that much. First thing everyone asks me is like, how many models does Wikipedia actually host? We host about 150 models in production. They range from things like anti-vandalism or like particular features that use ML to language translation and topic detection. The big thing about Wikimedia that will always blow my mind is it is governed by the community and funded by all of you, right? So the board has lots of community members on it. They're voted into that position of being on the board, and they govern what the foundation works on. And my salary and all of my servers and all of my team is all funded by you, right? So when you get that little Jimmy Wales personal appeal, that is you putting money into the stuff that we end up building. So we end up being pretty careful about what we spend money on. The thing about Wikimedia, and this becomes very relevant as we go farther into this talk, is that it is wildly transparent. We have, big thing, all of our code is public, right? So every single line of code that I write, you can all go and see and post comments on. But in addition to that, my team's internal chat is public. This is actually a screenshot, I think, from this morning. This is my team behind the scenes.
Oh, just a heads up, Chris, we can't see what you're sharing if you're sharing
slides.
You
can't see that? Why can't you? Let me try that again. I got this. Share screen. All right, I'm going to...
Now we see it. Yeah, cool.
That's weird change. All right, let me go to slideshow. All right, see it now?
Yep. Yeah, we're
all
good.
Right. So this is my team's chat. So you can see, everything my team works on all day. You can go in there and chat with us, watch us bang our heads against the wall about whatever we're dealing with. My team's work tickets are public. So, every single work ticket every single Monday we go through and we room all of our tickets. You can actually put in comments about the tickets and everything else. The thing about it is that we strive for just no black boxes, no secret sauce. Like, we want you to know everything that we're working on. We want you to see all the code that you're working on. We want you to have that participation in it. And the implication of that is that we need a way for you to see when we're hosting a model. Like, we want you to be able to understand what that model is. What are the implications of that model? Maybe you're a reader of Wikipedia and some model is like affecting a choice, like recommending something. We want you to be able to actually go and read about that model and understand it and dive right into it. Model cards, which have been talked about previously 3 talks ago, were started by Mitchell et al. Paper in 2018 and 2019. It is, sort of like, think of it as like a public card, which talks about, a single source of truth for the model. So it is public facing, and it talks about the good and the bad of the model, the details of how it was trained, the motivation behind it, what it should be used for, what it should not be used for, what should you watch out for, how can you go get the code if that's available, how can you go get the data if that's available, that kind of stuff. And to us, this was a pretty important thing to think about because, again, we are very much trying to make sure that you can go and know for a fact what you're putting your money towards and if you contribute to the site, like how we're using stuff, how we're recommending stuff to you, how we're saying something is like possible vandalism or not. We want to make sure that you don't need to trust us. You can go and check it out yourself. So first thing we did when we started setting up these is just go straight to the literature. This is the original paper. The original paper actually provides a really nice example of what they think a model card would be. But one of the things that you run into a lot is that translating that kind of stuff into a real world thing that you're going to put in production obviously takes a little bit of time to sort of figure out how you want to do that, and where the line is between a model card and documentation in a certain setting. So we spent a lot of time speaking to the community, to researchers, to our contributors, to the, the people who spend a lot of time on Wikipedia and are very well known on the site. And we wanted to know, like, what kind of stuff were they looking for in something like this? And really, it fell into sort of three groups. One, it was community members who really wanted to govern the model, right? Like if people on French Wikipedia don't want us to use a model on French Wikipedia, they have a right to say, like, hey, we don't want to use it, and we'll stop, we'll turn it off for them. It was also researchers and volunteer contributors who just really wanted to know, the ins and outs of the model, how we were training it, what was the training data that were used. They wanted to go pick that apart, contribute to it, right? You're totally free and available to come and contribute to code to our models, make them better. And then finally, just the general public who was sort of interested in that. So once we knew that, it became pretty straightforward to come up with what I have a proof of concept. And I'll link this into the Slack when we're done. So this is a proof of concept of a model for our language agnostic topic. So it's detecting the topic of articles without taking into account the actual language that's used, like English or something like that. And the big part about it, just as a start, is that this model card, like right at the front, we wanted to have something that talked about how that model was being used, right? So this is the motivation behind like what we think this model should be doing, how it's working, where we sort of got to the point that we needed to make a model. And the idea behind this is that it should be the least technical part of the description. We want the least technical part at the top of the page. And then as you scroll down the page, scroll down the model card, you get more and more and more technical. So this is something that we hope, anyone from any kind of background, whether technical or not, could come in and have an opinion about it or sit and discuss it. Off to the side, you sort of have that nitty-gritty detail that's really nice to have, that's just an explanation of a model card. And one of the things that is interesting to note is actually that there is no Wikipedia page for a model card. And so our attempt to link to that didn't really work at first because there was actually no Wikipedia page for model cards. Interesting twist there. This is also where you'd have the code linked to the data, linked to like who made the model, that kind of stuff. So you could end up reaching out. And this is probably one of the most important ones. Up in the top corner, it says discussion. Every single Wikipedia page has a talk page, which is where people talk about the contents of that Wikipedia page. And following that model, we wanted to have a discussion page and make sure that there was a place where people can come and discuss the model. And this is really a key part to us. This is where we want the community to go, where they want to say if a model is good, say if they have problems, if they have questions, anything like that. There's like a place to go to talk about that kind of stuff, to contest it, to say we're idiots, all that's totally fine. View history, just like any other Wikipedia page, you can view every single edit that's made on the page. You can also favorite it, which means that using your Wikipedia account, you don't need an account on Wikipedia, but if you do an account, you can favorite it and you'll get an update whenever the page changes. So anytime there's like an update, you'll get a notification. Scrolling down the page, this is following pretty closely what we have on the Mitchell et al. Paper. There's this uses, like who should be the people who are using this model, how you should use it. I think one of the most interesting things for us was how you should not use it. That's been a pretty interesting one of like, okay, where's the limits to where we think this model will apply? And also like where we're just using it on the site right now. So you could know that like we're using it on this particular wiki for this particular purpose. Next is ethical considerations. This part has been pretty interesting because it's something where the folks that are making the model have a lot of thoughts about, what you should think about when you end up putting this model is, where like the details like, okay, I set this threshold at this level. Is that good or bad? What are the, costs and benefits to doing so? And this is a place for them to put it rather than sort of like hiding it in documentation. Scrolling down farther, we have stuff about model performance. Our goal is for all of this to be auto-generated. So whenever we would train a new model, the goal is that this would be auto-populated with new information. And so it's as fresh as possible for how things are going. And then also to provide a deep dive where you could like look at model performance over time to deal with things like model drift. Implementation is typically just the details that we want of the model. It's less than documentation, but more than just a brief description of the model, just like so you could have an idea of how things, how went we've been about it, what models we use, that kind of stuff. Data, we'd like to expand to a full data card, but for start, we're just going to work on data, which is some description of like how the data is being used, ideally a link to the data. But in this case, we didn't do that, but like that would be where we'd like to go on something like this. And then finally, at the end, just the licensing citation information. So if you wanted to know, okay, can I use this model, anything like that, we have it all right there for you. And the next step is that that was the proof of concept for the card. Our next step is to start rolling it out for all 150 models that we have. And the reason I'm giving this talk is I'd love for you all to give us feedback. This is actually a link. I will link the actual the slide deck in the Slack, and you can go and give us feedback. We want you to tell us what we're doing wrong. That is the reason that I'm giving this talk. And the other reason I'm giving this talk is we're hiring an MLE. So if you want to come work on stuff like this and have the internet shout at everything you do, come on board. We'd love to have you.
Wow. This is, this is very forward thinking. And I appreciate it so much. I mean, a lot is talked about like AI ethics and this responsible AI, but it feels like you're just doing it. And then you come and show us that, oh yeah, we've already got this proof of concept out. So super cool to see. I have one question. Since you are the last person, I'm going to assume you have a minute to answer it.
Definitely do.
And when you mentioned the ethical considerations there, is it only from the team or is it from anyone on the internet? They can also add that.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is that it is treated just like any Wikipedia page. It's not on Wikipedia, but it is using the same software that runs Wikipedia. And the goal is that it would be crowdsourced. We want people to participate in this kind of stuff. And that is why we treat it like a Wikipedia page. Like the thing that we know is that wiki content and how to deal with that kind of stuff. And so integrating it with things like the talk page and allowing anybody to edit the pages is like a really, really important idea to us because it's fundamental to how we do things. So yeah, like if someone comes in with an ethical consideration, edit the page. And then if people disagree, they'll go on the talk page and they'll argue it out and debate it and discuss it. And we'll get to some kind of, like place where we feel like we're saying it correctly. And then that's what ends up being on the main page.